Hello and welcome back to my horror writing segment where I will deliver some handy tips for aspiring writers, for those who might have writer's block, and for those wanting to turn your stories into a short film if that is the direction you are going in. In this episode, I will be discussing characters and how important it is to make sure you get this crucial element right. Because we, the viewer or the reader, wants to invest in the characters, or it's a waste of time and money. Characters are what can make or break a story or a film. First off, make sure your characters' names are correct the entire way through the story. The biggest mistake I see people making is not checking simple things like getting the names correct. Or in films, for instance, some people use names that can get really confusing, especially if the characters have the same names or similar. And in some instances, they have several different names where they're also known as by other names. This can confuse your audience. What I found is that sometimes people get too bogged down with their writing that they forget one of the most fundamental elements, and that is the name of your characters. I've seen people incorrectly spell names or change them unintentionally, thus pulling the reader out of the story as we try to make sense of who this person is that is being mentioned. Make your characters personable, especially if you want the audience to feel a certain way. For instance, the death of a likable character can stir emotions within the audience, which in turn pulls us into the story whilst adding depth to the storyline. If we can't find the characters relatable in any way, then we have no investment in what happens in them. Therefore, we don't have any investment in the story. I've read many books and reviewed many films that just the author just does not put the effort into robust characterization, thus giving off the impression that the characters are superficial or wooden. And if you want us to hate a certain character, then give us reason to hate them. If you want us to love your character, then give us a reason to love them. So in the case of, say, a short story, you might only have one or two main characters. So make sure with those characters that they are firmly imprinted in your mind. You can visualize them. You can see what they look like. You know their ages. You know their backstory. You also know where they work, where they went to school, who their family members are. If that is in your story, then we need to know those sorts of things from your mind, what you want us to know about your character. So I've seen in novels, say for instance, there's loads of characters. It's really important to make sure that things like names, I know it sounds really trivial, but you would be surprised how many authors there are out there, even very famous ones, especially very famous ones. Say, one example is James Patterson, one of my favourite thriller crime authors. With him, I tend to find that he uses very similar names throughout some of his stories, which means that I can get quite confused, especially if there's, say, Shane Matthews, and then there's somebody else that's got a similar name, like Dr. Matthews or something. So, it just can get really confusing. I think in a bigger novel, there's a very fine balance of, you have to find a middle ground. Who are your main actors? What are their intentions? Sometimes I've read stories where there have been redundant characters. So especially in bigger books, there's characters that don't add to anything. They don't take away from it either. But what it can have at the end of the day is that person falls off the radar in the book, and you have to wonder, well, where did that person go? That's the other thing that can happen as well with bigger novels. The same thing can be said with short films or feature films as well. Okay, so there's some films that say, take a slasher for instance, that's just pure full-on horror, but we still want to invest in a character or someone in some character. We want to invest in a character, otherwise we get bored. We don't want to watch the film anymore because the characterization hasn't been done good enough, that we either want everyone to die, we can't wait to see how they're all going to die. Now that's in a slasher. Say if you're just writing a horror general no trope, and then you throw all these characters at us, and there might be, you know, quite a few characters, but we don't invest in any of them. I wondered, what was the point when I've watched these? What is the point of you having this film when all you're doing is going around killing people or murdering people, or something happens to a group of people, say, or a situation like someone's moved into a haunted house, for example, say that, and we want to have some feelings towards these people that you are writing about, especially if there's going to be a time when you want us to feel a certain way about a character, but you haven't built it up enough substance for us to even have any emotional investment in the character. So when your main character dies, we want to feel that, and we want to feel that emotion. We want to feel the loss of losing that character, and that comes down to how well you put your character into the story and surround them with backstory if that's necessary, to give us more depth about this character. Of course, there's superficial characters as well, but they also play an important role. So it could be a shopkeeper. Well, what makes a shopkeeper so interesting? You know, I want to know what the shopkeeper looks like. So does everybody else. So, yeah, I just thought I'd just talk about characterization today, because, yeah, I'm finding that there are some people who are making films or writing books or, say, writing short stories, and it just seems that what you don't want your audience to do is at the end of it go, hell, that was a waste of 75 minutes of my life. If you're just making a film just for the hell of it, then, you know, that's on you. But don't expect a 8 out of 10 rating for a lackluster film. I'm not talking about actors, I'm talking about characters. So, yeah, that's my take on characterization. If anybody wants me to explain it anymore, if you're stuck with how to present a particular character, then just ask me and in the comment section. And of course, I'll answer your question. I can always make a video about it as well if there's anything you're stuck on. The other thing I was going to say is that, the other thing that's quite important is you've got to make sure your characters have unique features. So you don't want them all to be cut and paste copy renditions of each other. They all have to have their unique flavor, whether one's got an accent, one's got a lisp, one's, I don't know, one's not as intelligent, the other one might be a brain box, and that has to be delivered. accurately for us to know those sorts of things. So that's why I think also their characterization is really important, and how you present your characters to us. Anyway, I hope this has helped you on your writing journey this week. You have been listening to me, Mistress of Darkness. Happy writing, fellow horror fiends, and get writing. And until next time, stay safe and bye for now.